The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called for matters of war, territorial disputes, or existential threats. Never, in the 17,000-year history of the Council, had it been summoned because of a babysitting schedule. Commander Zexthor, a Vraxian apex predator whose species had dominated their homeworld's food chain for millennia, stood at the podium with his obsidian scales bristling. His 3 rows of serrated teeth gleamed under the chamber's lighting as he addressed the assembly. The human offspring, designated Alexa, requires proper supervision during cycle hours 14 through 18. My claim stands from last rotation. A thunderous roar erupted from the Korthian delegation. War Chief Granach, whose people had evolved from the galaxy's most efficient pack hunters, slammed 4 massive fists against her console. Your rotation was extended by 2 hours yesterday, Vraxian. The Korthian Guard has been waiting 3 cycles for our designated time with the youngling. Ambassador Trill, a crystalline shardborn whose species could manipulate gravitational fields and had crushed civilizations beneath singularities, chimed in with a resonance that made the walls vibrate. This dispute is irrelevant. I have already prepared educational materials on quantum mechanics suitable for the child's developing neural pathways. My claim supersedes all others. Sebastian Cole, the only human representative in the chamber, pinched the bridge of his nose and wondered how his life had reached this point. 6 months ago, he'd been a simple cargo hauler, transporting supplies between Earth's colonies. Then his ship had suffered a critical malfunction near the Nexus station, and he'd brought his 4-year-old daughter Alexa along while repairs were made. That should have been the end of it. A week of maintenance, maybe 2, then back to normal runs. Instead, he'd accidentally introduced the galaxy's deadliest predator species to the concept of a human child. The obsession had started innocently enough. Alexa had wandered away from their temporary quarters on the station, as 4-year-olds tended to do. Sebastian had found her 15 minutes later in the station's commissary, sitting cross-legged on the floor while Commander Zexthor, a creature that could bite through reinforced hull plating, watched. Her stacked colorful blocks with an expression of absolute fascination. She has no fear, Zexthor had whispered reverently. She approached me and demanded I play towers. When I attempted to explain that Vraxians do not play, she simply handed me a block and instructed me to stop being silly. Word had spread quickly. The galaxy's apex predators, species that had clawed their way to the top of their respective worlds through violence and dominance, had discovered something that their warrior cultures had never produced. A small, fragile creature that trusted them completely. War Chief Granach had been next. She'd been in the middle of combat training simulations when Alexa had toddled into the restricted military sector, somehow bypassing 7 security checkpoints. The Korthian had frozen mid-strike as the tiny human had, grabbed onto her leg fur and asked if she wanted to have a tea party. The galaxy's most decorated military commander had spent the next 3 hours sitting on the floor with toy cups, her tactical squad watching in stunned silence. Ambassador Trill's conversion had been even more dramatic. The Shardborn had been negotiating a complex trade agreement when Alexa had wandered into the conference room and announced that the sparkly rock person was pretty. The ancient being who had witnessed the birth and death of stars had nearly destabilized their molecular structure from the unexpected emotional response. Now, the situation had spiraled completely out of control. The child requires exposure to proper hunting techniques, Zexthor argued, his tail lashing behind him. Human younglings must learn to track and stalk prey. She's 4, Sebastian interjected weakly. She doesn't need hunting techniques. She needs picture books and nap time. Nap time. Granach's eyes lit up, an expression that would have terrified entire battalions under normal circumstances. The Korthian lullaby cycles would be perfect for— Absolutely not, Trill interrupted. The child responded positively to harmonic resonance at 432 Hz. I have calculated the optimal frequency for human or juvenile rest periods. The 3 apex predators began arguing over the scientific merits of various sleeping arrangements while Sebastian contemplated the absurdity of his reality. These were the galaxy's most feared species. The Vraxians had conquered 40 systems through pure military might. The Korthians had ended wars by simply showing up. The Shardborn had existed since the galaxy was young, wielding power that bordered on godlike, and they were fighting over who got to read his daughter bedtime stories. Perhaps, Sebastian said loudly, We could establish a shared schedule that, unacceptable. All three species roared in unison. The chamber fell silent as the doors opened and a small figure walked in, trailing a stuffed earth animal, a bunny, its synthetic fur worn from constant hugging. Alexa Cole, utterly oblivious to the power gathered in the room, walked straight to the central platform where representatives of the galaxy's deadliest species stood frozen. "Daddy, I'm hungry," she announced. "Can Mr. Zexthor make me grilled cheese again? His is the best." The Vraxian commander's scales flushed a deep purple. Sebastian had learned this indicated intense pleasure in their species. "Of course, little one. I have been practicing the optimal cheese-to-bread ratio." "But after," Alexa continued, turning to Granak, "can we play hide-and-seek in the big room? You promised." The war chief's forearms crossed in a gesture of absolute satisfaction. "I did promise, youngling. My word stands eternal." "And Mr. Trill?" Alexa looked up at the crystalline being. "Will you show me the pretty lights again before bedtime?" The Shardborn's resonance softened to something almost musical. "It would be my honor, small one." Sebastian watched his daughter wrap the galaxy's apex predators around her tiny finger with nothing more than simple trust and innocent requests. She saw no monsters, no legendary warriors, no ancient cosmic entities. She saw friends who played with her, made her food, and showed her interesting things, and somehow, impossibly, these hardened predators had found something in this small human child that their warrior cultures had been missing. Someone who needed them not for conquest or protection, but simply for companionship. The Galactic Council's emergency session officially concluded with an established rotating schedule for Alexa care duties complete, with backup assignments and a waiting list of 17 other apex predator species who had formally requested visiting hours as Sebastian carried his daughter back to their quarters. Alexa waved goodbye to her admirers, each of whom stood a little taller, their fierce reputation somehow enhanced rather than diminished by their devotion to the small human. "Daddy," Alexa yawned, "why do all your friends look so scary but act so nice?" Sebastian smiled. "Because you taught the galaxy's greatest warriors something they'd never learned before, sweetheart." "What's that?" "How to be gentle." In the station's commissary, Commander Zexthor was already researching advanced grilled cheese techniques. War Chief Granak was designing a child-safe obstacle course, and Ambassador Trill was composing a lullaby that would resonate at precisely 432 hertz. The galaxy's apex predators had found their purpose, protecting not through fear, but through love, and the entire galaxy would learn that there was nothing more dangerous than someone who made a human child smile.